Done.
Thank you very much, sir. So welcome to this week's TOC meeting. We've got an agenda that looks surprisingly like last week's agenda. There's not been a lot of movement there at the moment, but that's all okay. So we've got reviewing the actions from last week, reviewing any outstanding PRs and any other business. So in terms of actions from last week, Chris and Eric, you were going to have a look through the repos to figure out what to archive, what not to archive, and what to migrate. How'd that go?
It went quite well. I've got context into all of the repositories at this point. So there's, about a dozen repositories that I was unsure of where they might belong. Archived a couple more, and I'll be reaching out to the various working groups about those last few repositories, seeing if they should be transferred and added to the charter, or if they should just be archived. So yeah, the incubator is a limited time, and that's a good thing. And then once that's done, we can do the same thing with the Cloudfoundry org and probably archive dozens of those repositories as well, and basically make sure that every repository that isn't archived is in the charter as part of a working group. And once that's done, I will talk to Pranav at the LF and get him a list of all the projects and the corresponding repositories. I did also get around finally to updating the website a little bit. Mm-hmm. There was a very outdated projects page that still had PMC stuff on there. And now that is just a working groups page that links to the charters of the working group. So that is a bit overdue, and it's, pretty lightweight, but that's better. So.
Okay, awesome. Eric, do you have any updates on the movement of Credhub into Cloudfoundry? I know that was mainly David's focus, but I don't know if you
don't have any updates on this yet. Yeah, I know he's been the one dealing with any of the legal checks or ramifications.
Mm-hmm. I spoke with David about that last week, and I've asked LF Legal for advice on that. So we're sort of waiting on that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, there's a proprietary license in there for, a bit of software that is not in the source code there, but it is compiled at runtime from an S3 bucket. So I'm a little uncertain as to how that, open source licensing works for something that's being compiled with it as opposed to the source code. So I'm asking LF Legal for clarification there, and then we'll figure out how best to proceed.
Okay, that seems perfectly sensible. I did see, Eric, that the nudges that you put in on 190 went in quite nicely, and that's all been merged. So that's an easy one to deal with. Now, I did get round to drafting the RFC for Cloudfoundry org membership. I will post that one in the chat now, 194, and we've started to have a little bit of discussion on that one. Hey, David.
Sorry, time got away from me.
No worries. No worries. So yeah, there's a couple of bits on there that I'll have a look at, and that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Generally, I think this is going in the right direction, unless anyone thinks otherwise. I think we should be pretty straightforward with that one. So I'll aim to get those done later on today, and then if anyone's got anything else, feel free to throw it in, and then I'd like to try and get it into that final comment period as soon as possible. So that way then we can unblock the automation side of things. David, now that you're... No.
Just getting the coffee.
Perfect timing.
That was really funny.
That was brilliant. Now that you're back, have you got any more to add on the Credhub release? Chris had said that he'd spoken to the LFF legal team, and it's in progress.
Yeah, I'm already on my side. I think I can get approval, so I'm not worried about the VMware approval, because it's really just a glitch that it's not in there in the first place. So if the Linux Foundation can take it, I think what I'm not yet prepared to say I'm willing to do is to split this BOSH release up. I just don't think there's enough consumers of Credhub release that it actually matters which open source file, and so on. I think if there was a big, I would be willing to do the work if somebody was really blocked on worrying about where the intellectual property lay or something, but I suspect it's not that big of a deal. Also, Credhub release is not that critical to Credhub. Like the important parts of Credhub are open source in the CFF, and the packaging layer could always be redone if necessary, right? It's a Java application.
Okay. Do we think that we should carry this forward as an action for next week, just to keep track of it?
Sure.
Yeah, it's like an open issue, right?
Yeah.
It is really.
Perfect. Yeah. So as long as it remains an open issue, we can decide to check in on open issues or not. Maybe that's like a meta question, right?
Yep.
Or we can do summit.al.
Okay, cool. So then the last action item we got was reviewing the communication to working group leads that Jan had written. And I think we're all pretty good with that one now, by the looks of things. So I guess it's just getting that one sent out. The only thing I would suggest is maybe putting a start date on it. I'm thinking, so do we effectively, are we giving us sort of like a couple of weeks notice of it starting?
I think in the part of the communication we drafted, we'd said we wanted feedback from the leads about the scope and agenda of those kinds of check-ins. And so we do want to start this quickly, but I didn't think we wanted to set a specific start date just yet until we have that discussion with the broader set of leads.
Okay, that's cool. So Jan, feel free to press the button on sending that one out.
There's one question on that, like what's the communication platform? Should I just do that on the TOC channel on Slack? Or, I mean, otherwise we'll, like, probably emails are everywhere, but then like actually it's not even public then, right? So we could just, or is it something for the CF mailing list, or I don't know where to send it. I don't care that much either, but
I mean, I was thinking probably emailing to working group leads first of all made sense.
But then it's communication from the TOC, so it's definitely an email thread with all of you on it as well.
Yeah.
And then that was where I questioned if I just put it on Slack as one example.
I would actually put it on Slack in the TOC channel, and if it's just in addition to have this conversation there, you can reference it, send it to upcoming working group leads.
Yeah, I guess that's the other one. Put it on the Slack.
So I probably put it there and then mention all the working group leads that I can find.
Yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable.
Then let's do it that way. Yep, I'll do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly public enough. I do worry about it getting lost in Slack noise, but like we could start there, and if things die down or if we don't get a response, maybe also sending it to CF Dev and CF Bosch would be a good idea. That would be equally as public, and there'd be a more threadable, persistent conversation. But I say let's start with Slack and see how that goes.
Okay. Cool. Right, so I've got that one down. Okay, so in terms of PRs that we've got as outstanding ones, the first one on the list is the machine parsable working groups, which we missed last week because of time of PR raising and time of checking things out. So I'll pass it over to you, Ruben, to talk through.
Yeah, I think it's useful to have machine parsable working group definitions because ideally we drive GitHub permissions with that data at some point, and maybe we can use it for the Linux Foundation to set up the dashboards and stuff, right? So it would be good to have one source of truth. I tried different things first. I tried parsing the markdown and making something, but that didn't really work because of, I don't know, it was not standardized, and parsing markdown is not fun. So I thought YAML is readable by humans. It's even a bit denser. It renders well in Markdown. So yeah, I just went with a section of YAML inside the working group definitions. So we don't have to sync two files, because the alternative would be like a separate YAML file, but then the problem becomes who's going to be owner of that file, right? If it's one file, or do we have multiple files, and who's going to keep it in sync? So yeah, I went with this more lightweight approach, and there's one script that parses the concatenates all the YAML snippets, and that could be used by automation.
Okay. I'm okay with that one. The only thing that I kind of have rattling around in my mind is sort of like YAML and accessibility is something I've never checked out. So how do screen readers cope? That's the only thing that I've just got as like an immediate thing that just leaps out, because I know that it works quite well with Markdown. Has anyone tried?
No, don't have a screen reader.
Sounds like an interesting experiment, although it is a YAML code block embedded in the Markdown.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So maybe by transitivity, it works fine. I don't know.
Because that's actually a thought, and one that I'm going to pass in Chris's direction is, what do we need to consider from accessibility requirements?
I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, happy to chat more about this or dig into this a bit deeper.
So if that's really a concern, I think having this data machine readable allows us to eventually display it in a better way.
Yeah. So that's the only thought that I'd had. I may see if I can find someone to test this with. I'll see what I can do. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so I'll take an action.
If this doesn't work out in terms of accessibility, we could also go the way of generating some Markdown from the YAML, right? Making the YAML the leading format.
Yes.
But then generate the Markdown.
I looked into that, but there's a bit of free format above that, right? So you would need to extend the schema a bit to have maybe sections for that as well. Or you would need to concatenate or have placeholders. It would all complicated, basically. I have tried quite a few things there.
Okay. All right. So hopefully it turns out that it is nice and accessible, and then that solves that problem really nice and easily. Let's see what we can discover. So the next PR we've got is the node run and switch to GitHub app auth, which was briefly mentioned, and this is one that's stuck on the RFC for adding people to the org as a precursor before merging. David, was that something in our direction or in the room?
I had to tell my daughter I was really excited about this.
Cool. Okay, so nothing to do on that one as yet. But then we do have David's one for adding the RFC for Jammy jellyfish. Which is there? Great.
I don't think I tagged people like we thought the right thing to do was. But Norman had a comment that he was going to add a comment, which is not actually a comment.
Yes.
So I think at this point, I don't want to, like, we're working on this actively. So it seems like I gotta like actually just move forward and submit it. So I'll log in and move its state from draft to not draft. Today, it still means people can still comment on it And, we can pull it out of ready if we think there's significant opposition, right? And be like, oh, this is actually not ready to go. But otherwise, I need this to go through so that we can all align around a timeline for various things.
We already have an alpha of Jammy on Porte.io,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, cool. Well, that's quite nice. So then the next one that we've got is removing CF log cache CI users from members list. Now, this is one that is also a little bit tied up with the RFC on removing people, even though it's a bot on this one. Removing things can have the unintended consequences. So that's where TOC were sitting in to have that wider viewpoint on potential impacts. And also there's some conflicting files that need updating in it. So I'm going to suggest that we kind of let this one sit at the moment till we get the RFC in place, get the automation, and then poke for the updates accordingly to remove the conflict. Does that seem a sensible approach?
For removing, yes. When it comes to adding something, it may maybe more urgent.
Yes, definitely. Well, some removals can be pretty urgent too, but in this case, it's a bot, so not too worried about that one. Okay.
I mean, I know that this has kind of motivated the process around adding and removing members, but I mean, just in the interests of keeping things clean and up to date, I mean, we've identified that we think that the TOC should be responsible for removing people. Yep. So, like, would we want to take care of this as a one-off before we, get everything really codified with the RFC, or do we really want to wait for the RFC to land and be accepted?
Is it good to have it as a test case, I guess? Ruben, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, there will be, so the problem is that because we now have like some time that it takes before we're gonna take it live, we will have to do like a dump again of generate that file. And then there will be, if we overwrite that file, then this change might be lost, right? So if we merge it now, it could be that we get that user back, because if we merge it now, it's not executed because there's no automation. So that user will not be removed. Then we do a dump again and we add that user back. So yeah, if we don't have it live, it doesn't make sense to merge something because it will just be not be applied.
I see. So if we were to keep things in sync, we would we'd merge this to reflect that in the YAML file, but then we would also just manually remove this bot user from the Cloudfoundry org to manually synchronize those until we have the automation in place. Sure.
Yeah, okay. That could be also an option.
Okay.
Okay, so there's like a couple of things that are intersecting here. There's the automation to have the YAML file as the source of truth. Yeah. That's not active yet, so we're continually diverging from any state that's in the CF GitHub org itself. And then there's the separate matter of codifying the process and responsibilities for adding or removing people from the org that we have in the RFC. Okay.
Yeah, but the automation part is blocked on the RFC for codifying it, right? That's what the current state is. So we have to chain a stack of 3 PRs or something.
Yeah. Okay. Given it's not urgent, then I propose that we leave that for the time being and we get the more pressing ones out the way in that case. Okay. And then, yes, that's the Credhub repo, which we don't need to do because we've already talked about previously. So that's perfectly fine. So I'll just take that out for now. That is all the outstanding PRs that we have at the moment that are in our sphere of influence. So what interesting things have people got to talk about this week?
There's maybe one interesting PR, that's a CF deployments working group. And the good news is there will be some progress. I don't have yet everything ready, but let's say for the next TOC meeting, I hope to amend PR, and we have a good candidate for the workgroup lead. And I will also come up with some proposals for approvers so that then the work in this working group can really start.
Okay.
Just in time for the Jammy work.
Yeah, I know. And it is also urgent for us. So.
So that's a fairly big one, and that's nice to know that that's in progress. Okay.
I need one more meeting, and then I hope end of the week for the next meeting. Yeah, should be good to go.
Awesome. Has anyone got anything else?
Related to Jammy, we had done an experiment today to try to get Ruby 2.7.5 to compile on Jammy. That was not working because of OpenSSL 3. But the OpenSSL 3 gem actually states that it's compatible with Ruby 6 or 2.6. So it should be compatible. We were able to patch the Ruby source code with that gem and have it compile. So that could make it easier for us to, or take some of the urgency of bumping to like a more recent Ruby, for example, for the cloud controller, those types of code bases. I mean, there are options, right? It's good to have that at least. Ideally, we bump everything to a really new Ruby, but if we can't, we have that option.
Yeah, it reduces the pressure.
Yeah, you don't want to have to do everything at once, right?
Okay, nice. Has anyone got anything else of interest? No.
We had the meta PR about the RFC process. Is that on merge now, or is that still open? Or that has been merged? Okay.
Yep. So the process is there. We're just working on getting some of those first RFCs in.
Does that mean that we had some working agreements before? There are some PRs about working agreements. Should those be renamed to RFCs or something?
Yes, I believe Amelia was going to look at doing those once the RFC process had been agreed, but I did spot that there was a holiday. So I imagine that will happen in due course.
Yeah, I know, Amelia, I'm just looking at those in the list of PRs. Looks like she's got a couple of them open. Ruben, you had one about the stale bot, and Jeff has one about project roadmap and visibility. Yeah, I think Amelia's, she might be out for the next couple of weeks.
So feel free to reformat over to the RFC format, and I think that there'll be a nice, quick, easy merge, quite frankly. I don't think there's going to be too much to worry about at all there. Okay. Cool. Right. If nobody has anything else, then I guess we should gain a bit of time back, and hopefully we're going to have some interesting things from some working group leads about interacting with us next week. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, all, and hope you have a wonderful day. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.